My life's work has been in religion and peace. I've worked since 1977 on issues of conflict resolution, and reconciliation among religions. For these years, these decades, since 1977, me and my organization have been involved in a number of major conflicts in the world: the first Gulf War, the Iota Mosque controversy, the fall of the Soviet Union, Israel and Palestine, and other major hotspots and difficulties around the world. But our focus is the religious contribution, either for good or for ill, and to try to bring the religions to bear to be more involved in peace. So on this particular visit to India, I'm here at the invitation of the Sri Ramanuja Mission Trust, and I've only been the first 3 days or so of a one-week visit. It's been quite a remarkable experience. Of course, coming to India, which is in part my homeland, it's the land of my mother's birth. So there's always much to discover, there's much to see how the country evolves. And also we were hosted and invited and welcomed by a number of beautiful and moving organizations and institutions, including the Balaji Institute, and there were students from 3 or 4 colleges attending our lectures and seminar. It was very well organized. There was a lot of good preparation and interesting speakers. And then today the AIMS, All India Medical Service, had maybe 60 or 70 young nursing students also in attendance. On both occasions, we as the international guests offered some thoughts and gave presentations about our work and what we've known and what we've learned. But the highlight of each event was always the discourse of Chaturvedi Swamiji. This was my first time to meet him. I did, of course, do my research and tried to learn as much as I could in preparation to come here. But there's really no amount of preparation anyone can make to prepare oneself properly to discover what happens when you meet Swamiji. He is a veritable, every metaphor of force that you can imagine, Niagara Falls or a fire hydrant or waterfalls or a geyser, Yellowstone, the force of output that flows from Swamiji, of systematic, cogent, coherent, unfolding from A to Z, that should properly occupy volumes of literature just in a single outpouring. It's almost as though there's complete still. He takes one breath and out comes a complete revelation on any subject and its implications for peace, as well as every imaginable way that it inheres in all of human affairs. The first day was mostly on economic affairs. And suddenly, it was as though every economist had written 8 or 12 books and Swamiji spoke them in a minute and a half, or 6 minutes, or 8 minutes. It's just a roaring flow of unimaginable reflection on the essential nature of economics and commerce and business affairs as they should integrate into peace and peaceful life, both for the individual, the country, the world. And then today, our community was nursing students. So all of a sudden, this same man yesterday, who's instantaneously seeming the world's preeminent economic expert, suddenly became as though he were a senior medical doctor of a hospital. Instantly, the complete range of all of health, nutrition, health science, health economics, health profession. There's always a bit of humor, a bit of things to lift us up and make us laugh and wake us up. But most of all, and this is what he repeated each time, he said, the beginning comes at the end. The beginning comes when the speaking ends. And in each case, those gathered were not inspired just to do better, but presented with a world of opportunity to which they could aspire, to which they could dream, to which they could seek to suddenly have their professions shift from a workaday effort to simply be a nurse or simply be marketing or economy to being a genuine peacemaker in the field of their discipline. So it was a truly shocking thing to experience. And yeah, I've never met anyone like Swamiji in this. Well, my areas are education and information and conflict resolution and interreligious and interfaith reconciliation. So I hope and pray that I can continue to be helpful to the mission of Sri Ramanuja Trust and that we can build a better world together.
First of all, I am Secretary of a Provisional World Parliament which meets in conformance with Article 19 of the Constitution for the Federation of Earth, that is Earth Constitution. I've been associated with the Provisional World Parliament since 1984, and in 2003 the Parliament nominated and elected me to be Secretary of the Provisional World Parliament. So, and the secretarial work involves recording, planning and reviewing proposed legislation, and outreach to the public regarding the work that we're doing. So, in December of 2014, my colleague, Dr. Glenn Martin, attended the first Grand Global Peace Meet 1, which met in cities in southern India. And he called me after the Grand Global Peace Meet and asked if I would be able to come to India because he had been requested to recommend someone. And I'm glad to be working on Yatra here with the Sri Ramanuja Mission Trust in the Grand Global Peace Meet 2. I think this is helpful. The meeting of people at all levels of society is part of the work of a Provisional World Parliament and part of the work of a World Parliament when that finally forms. The members of Parliament need to meet with everyone, speak, learn about the problems and challenges that people have around the world so that we're able to respond in the best way. Delightful. I'm amazed by the great, I don't know how to say what it is. It's he has this knowledge of so many areas, and listening to his presentation of the knowledge, Chaturvedi Swami speaks on a wide range of subjects, and he evidently knows that wide range of subjects, which I think is very helpful in relation to work that is to be done.
On the peace area.
And peace area and in all areas. And there's a sense in which the matter of peace is something that is an essence of all the different activities that we partake in. It's an essence of all the different subjects of study or learning that we have to take part in as human beings. Definitely. I am so happy to be here in India, and I'm very happy to have met Chaturvedi Swami and the other people working with Chakravarti Swami. I consider this a grand friendship, and I'm so delighted. Well, I'm not so sure about such a large distinction between East and West, but when we're speaking of peace, often we're speaking about a subject which can be taught, and the learners may be learning negotiation, they may be learning things that activities or strategies in the past that have failed in political negotiations. So people may be studying and learning about political negotiations for peace, or the writing and deliberation of legislation for peace. That's one aspect, and there are certainly, evidently, there are skill sets to be learned in terms of negotiations. However, in fact, I wonder if peace is not something very much deeper than merely a set of skills for negotiating politics, for negotiating diplomacy, but rather, and so in that sense, peace is not a period of quiet between two wars, but rather peace is something that each of us throughout the world as human beings, we have a responsibility to discover what is that. And in that respect, I'm learning just as everyone else is learning. I have studied peace legislation for years, since 1984, but the peace is not going to come unless we discover for ourselves in our hearts this love of living, which finds life sacred, and that has affection for all human beings, regardless of race, regardless of religious background, regardless of nationality, regardless of economic statuses. So can we discover that? And that, I don't think, is so much a transmission that is taught in a class. Is it something, because I find that in my day-to-day life, I wake up in the morning and I have to learn new every morning. It's not something that I can expect to teach to another person or have someone teach me how to be full in our hearts, how to be free with the mind. This is something that is an art of living, and it's something that we have to discover, and it comes with love, not so much a transmission as with the fullness of living.
The University of Sydney's Center for Peace and Conflict Studies, and also for Saybrook University in California. Let me put that in the broader framework. I've been active in peace studies for many decades, active with the International Peace Research Association, where I'm a co-convener of its Commission on International Human Rights. I also sit on the executive board of the International Peace Research Association Foundation. I write broadly on peace studies, but in peace studies, where many people who do peace studies focus on direct violence, my specialty is structural violence, which focuses on the harms and injustice that are mediated through the social system and result in sustaining issues such as hunger, poverty, and illness, ill health. That's where my work is centered. And in that context, in that framework, my work centers on food, children, and human rights in various combinations. So all my work, almost all my work, is about those things. I write on these things, I consult with a variety of UN agencies and NGOs, and I've been working on the issues for a very long time. I very much appreciate the invitation to join this effort, this global peace meeting. And for me, it's a new kind of orientation, certainly very different from the usual academic conference, and also very different from the international agency kind of setting. I particularly appreciate the deep spiritual framework surrounding the entire work of peace studies that it advances. But I appreciate that at the same time, it is strongly oriented toward action, whether it's grand global action or local and even modest action. It encourages people to do real work out in the world and not just spin concepts. I appreciate that very much. I enjoyed meeting with all the people at the conference here, interacting with them, especially since many of the people draw from frameworks and really worlds different from the ones I'm familiar with. But the main thing that meets my interest and matches my approach is the willingness and encouragement to move toward project-oriented work and support project-oriented work in a very professional way. I mean, drawing on talent from the business schools, for example, in order to support and encourage doing this work in a business-like way, that is an orderly, professional way, very thoughtful way, based on serious research. I appreciate that very much. And of course, I appreciate the apparent interest in some particular ideas for project activities that I've carried with me to this meeting. That has been very important to me. But Swami's talks in the larger meetings were stunning. He has a combination of both deep knowledge and deep intellect. He puts together an analysis in a remarkable variety of fields, and very quickly, very smoothly. It comes faster than I can digest it in a single pass. I hope to review what he's had to say. But what I particularly appreciated is the interaction we had in a smaller meeting. He met with a group of people talking about a variety of ideas and approaches, and also about particular projects that the trust might and he might be engaged in. He listened well, understood what was being suggested, thought quickly and constructively about ways to move ahead on the project, and we're well on our way as far as I can tell, and I think that was a hugely satisfying outcome for these few days of work. We did talk a lot about food security, and Swami recognizes that's my particular interest area. I focus on food security broadly. I've done an enormous amount of writing on it and working with a variety of agencies on it. And I've come to a particular interest in the food security of young children, infants and young children, partly because national and international agencies generally fail to give those children the attention they require. So I see here an opening, a possibility for doing some genuinely constructive work on these issues. For someone who's deeply interested in issues of child malnutrition and mortality, India is the right place to come to work on that issue, because it has about a fifth of the world's problem. It has a very large share of the world's problems of young children. But there's an openness here that I sense in the trust in Swami and more broadly to really taking charge of the issue after it's being neglected for far too many years. So I'm very optimistic at this stage. I hope we'll be able to continue discussing these ideas and bring them to fruition, not to conclusion. There won't be a conclusion on this, but to get that train started and going down the track toward doing some very productive work here. At first in certain sections of the country, then if we do well, it will grow not by argument, but by demonstration of how to do these things well, which is the right way to go. I should mention here that my approach increasingly is to address global problems by focusing on the local community level first and building up and out from there. Create good demonstration models locally that will be emulated by others. And it's, the demonstration, I think, is likely to be more convincing than arguments. Peace and I would, just to make it completely clear, I think it's sometimes useful to speak about peace and justice, to make it very clear that we're not simply talking about the absence of physical violence. There are other kinds of violence, other kinds of injustices that need our full attention. And many peace researchers, of course, by now have come to recognize that very well. Speaking about the indirect violence as a form of structural violence mediated through the social system. So much of my work since the 1990s has focused on the human right to adequate food. I've participated in the very intense campaign to develop the human right to adequate food at the global level that began in the early 1990s. I was a part of it all the way through. And then I recognized and followed closely India's development of its right to food as, you know, with the campaign began seriously with the Supreme Court decisions in 2001 with the writ petition to the Supreme Court, and then with the passage of the National Food Security Law in November of 2013. I'm particularly interested in the application of that law as it applies to the midday meals program and the integrated child development services scheme. What interests me about it is that both of those programs are entitlement programs. That is to say, the people who meet the criteria, the children who meet the criteria, are entitled to those services. They have a legal right to those services. These are not charity programs. And I'm pointing out in the work some papers I've written in the Economic and Political Weekly, and also in a refreshment of that argument in the current paper, that the missing piece in India's right to food system is effective recourse mechanisms for the rights holders. That is to say, they need an institutionalized, effective, safe mechanism through which they can complain as individuals if their rights appear to be violated and expect to have the government's action corrected. That has been missing in India's right to food program, and I think serious efforts should be made to correct that. One could start modestly by focusing on. So my thought is that if enough women provide breast milk to provide for infants who need it on a large scale, we can push aside that pressure to adopt infant formula and instead have those women who either will not or for some reason cannot breastfeed to get breast milk from other women. And I think that one way to do that is to allow women, or encourage women who have surplus breast milk to sell it, to offer it for sale, to make a supply available to other families. I think this would be very important to the women who provide that breast milk, and it would be important for the health of the infants. It would improve their prospects very significantly. So I'm hoping to explore the possibilities for doing that in a smart business-like manner with the trust.